Hi, I'm Doris Purchase, and welcome to Beyond the Frame, a podcast created just for you by Propeller Art Gallery, artists empowering artists in Toronto. Together, we'll take a deep dive into the hearts and minds of working visual artists today and their practice. In each episode, you will hear illuminating and intimate explorations of all things art, and you'll hear it in the artist's own voice. We'll talk process, inspiration, challenges, and much more. Everything you've ever wanted to know about art making or about the artists themselves happens right here. So let's sit back and have a listen, shall we? Today we welcome Leah Probst. Which ism is it? Under which ism would you classify your work?
So for me, I do a lot of portrait work, and with that, I really try to strive for heightened realism. It's sort of like a category. I don't know if it's a real heightened realism. It's not hyper realism. It's not quite there yet, but yeah, it's definitely more on the realer side. So I like to say that it's heightened rather than hyper or photorealism. It's not quite there yet. I strive for that for sure, but heightened is the ism. Heightened realism is where I lie.
Who's your muse? Influencers, educators, mentors? Who has greatly inspired you?
Anytime I get asked this question, I normally say just Chuck Close or Mary Pratt. I find them extraordinary artists. For one, they're both very hyper-realistic, and I just love how they paint, and it's beautiful, and I would love to paint like them. But there's a lot of other people who inspire me as well, even not just naming names, but people who, make work that they absolutely love to make, and then they also find success in selling that work. And they're not pressured by the art world or society to make different work so that they can sell it. It's just the work that they truly love to make and that they find success in making it. And that's inspiring because that's what I would like to do. I'm sure it's what almost all artists would like to do with their practice. So that's pretty much who inspires me and who my muse is.
Materials matter. What are your chosen favorite tools and preferred medium?
Okay, well, I've dabbled with almost everything. It feels like I went to art school for 8 years or something like that. And so I've really tried everything. And I found that I paint. This is what I do. This is what I love to do. And painting in acrylic. So I have done oil paintings, and it was fun as well. It's just I don't think I had enough practice in school to make that my primary medium. So I just feel really comfortable with acrylic paint. And I also have recently just really enjoyed adding different mediums to my acrylic paintings. So adding in pastel or pen and ink or marker even, just to really heighten that realistic look of my paintings. And I've kind of realized that it's not traditional to do that. So, and I don't even really consider my paintings mixed media, even though, majority of them will have touches of other mediums other than paint in them. But it's just, it's something that I realize that I don't have to put a name on it. It's just adding those things into it is okay because art is, it can be whatever you want it to be. So there's not one right or wrong way to do it. So I love just adding little bits of different mediums, but primarily it's acrylic paint.
Slump secrets. What methods do you employ to get yourself out of a slump?
This is a hard one because, it happens often. Finding myself just not being inspired or just not having the drive to paint. But what I do in this situation is I realize that every artist, no matter whether it's, a musician or an actor, any visual artists of all sorts, everyone goes through this. Everyone has struggles to, when they're in an artistic slump. Every artist does that. So just understanding that is really important, and realizing that it's not just me that's going through this, and that I'm done with my art career, and all I have to do is just start working. Because for me personally, when I just pick up a paintbrush, pick up a pencil, anything, just have to get something on paper, something on a canvas, and from there I find that once I start, I can't stop. I get into this groove of needing to continue, and even if I finish a piece, I just want to continue doing another one, to the point where I almost need to be like, well, okay, I need to stop and take a break and do other things for a bit. But then once I do that, then it's kind of a vicious cycle of getting inspired again and picking up that paintbrush again. So yeah, just kind of being aware that this happens not just to me, but to everyone, and that all I need to do is start working.
In the beginning. So tell me a bit about your process. Do you have a bag of tricks, lucky talismans, or habits? Where do you start? And more importantly, when do you stop?
So I have a pretty solid process. It's not just willy-nilly and I just get inspiration and then I start. I normally I always work from photos. So I always have to have a photo image, whether it's a reference that I'm taking myself or a found image, or if I'm creating sort of a hybrid of both in Photoshop, I create that photo reference, and then from there, I always start with a pencil sketch. And for me, with the pencil sketch, I need to have it exactly as I want it, because what I've found throughout my paintings and over the years is if the pencil sketch is correct, if it's rendered properly and I'm happy with it, then I know the piece will be successful. I don't know if that's just something that I've made up in my head, or if, that's something that I do because I'm happy with the sketch, so I will continue with that painting. But that's always pretty much how I start. And when to stop, that's something that I'm sure a lot of artists struggle with as well. Because for me, I've definitely butchered a couple pieces by overworking them and working them to the point where I want them to be perfect. But then I'm really just like taking a couple steps backwards, because I'll have to work on it longer to kind of get it back to where it was before I had overworked it. So I end up working it even more so. So knowing when to stop is really just putting down the paintbrush and saying it's done, and then that's it. And I am one of those people who never go back to painting over or painting something in again. If I see something that doesn't look right, I just say it's done, and that's how it is. That's how it was meant to be. So yeah.
Calling all emo. What do you wish people to think or feel when they contemplate your work?
I don't think there's anything that I wish that people would feel. I mean, every work I make is pretty different. And what I really enjoy when people look at my work and when they talk about my work, especially to me, I love hearing other people's opinions about my work. And especially when it's a portrait, learning what people think about like where this person came from, or what their story is, or how they feel in that portrait. I think that's a super interesting thing. And I love when each individual takes their own story away from my work, because everyone thinks so differently, and there's no right or wrong, or, it doesn't say on my work exactly what this is and how you should feel. I love that people can just create, this whole life around looking at one of my portraits, and I'd love to hear what they think and their story that they've created around it.
The struggle is real. Talk to me about your biggest challenges as an artist. What methods do you use to overcome these challenges?
again, going back to getting started and really like producing a good piece of work. And the idea that I need to, it's almost the pressure of having created a work that was successful and hearing from others that this is a very successful work, and then coming back to the drawing board and creating another piece that is just as good or better, right? That's no artist wants to feel that they've created a work after a really, really amazing piece that is subpar. So having that pressure to, create something that's bigger and better every time you create, that's probably my biggest struggle as an artist. And, you end up spending more and more time, and then it comes back to that vicious cycle of not wanting to overwork that work, but, wanting to make it better than the last. That's my biggest struggle.
Picture perfect. In your opinion, what constitutes a perfect piece of art? And what qualities in your own work would you signify as a perfect work? For example, perfect composition, confident brushstrokes, illustrating a concept, or something else altogether.
Going back to the previous question, I'm sure all artists will say that there's no such thing as a perfect work. Maybe some do, but in my opinion, there can't be, because you will kill it if you try and perfect it. And, if let's just say you create a work that you think is perfect, and then you bring it out to the public, and then, everyone's going to have their own opinions about it, and it's going to skew your opinion, and then it's not going to be perfect. So I really don't believe there is such thing as a perfect piece of work, and every work is perfectly imperfect in their own way.
Art Speak. How do you feel about titling, discussing, and explaining your work?
Well, when I first create a work, it's my biggest inspiration really when creating my work is the imagery that I choose, the photo reference. So I get really drawn to that, and I'm excited to paint the image that I'm looking at. But then I am a little bit nervous because I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to talk about this work. I don't have this big elaborate reason for painting this. I'm really just painting it because I love this image and I want to create my own life into it. And so I'm a little bit nervous at first that I'm not going to have anything to talk about when I create this image. And then what ends up happening is, especially when it's a portrait, you're sitting in front of this face for so many hours. You kind of develop a relationship with that person, or, with anything, with the object, with whatever you're painting, the subject. And that's where the discussion comes from. That's where I want to have conversations about that work. It's all in the process and how it became what it is sitting there on the wall. That's really, where it all comes from, is from the creation of it. And that's when I actually find that there's so much to talk about in creating that work. And, that's where the title comes from as well. I always figure out my titles while painting. They'll just come to me when I'm painting the work, and I'll just know that's going to be the title. And again, I just don't look back. That's it. And that's its name from there on. So at first I feel a little bit like I'm not going to be able to talk about them, but then once they're finished, I have endless words to talk about my work.
Heavy metal or classical? What do you listen to while you work? Or is silence your thing?
Oh, a little bit of everything, really. I definitely need to have a multitude of genres and different things that I'm listening to while I'm painting. It's so many hours, right, that you're sitting there. So to be listening to one thing I've done it before, and it makes me go a little bit crazy when I'm doing it. So I need to definitely mix it up. If I'm just like really concentrating, it'll be slower, softer music. If I'm, putting a background in. I want to be up and I'll be listening to more upbeat music. So it goes faster. I always find that my tempo kind of matches the music with how I'm painting. Then also podcasts. I love to listen to podcasts when I paint. Stand-up comedy, always amazing, because you don't have to be watching it. You can just be listening to it. Yeah, and then also silence as well. Again, that's where sort of that conversation builds with my paintings and kind of the stories around how I feel about my work and my painting. That all always builds in the silence. And I find that for me, painting is very meditative. So when I do take the time, a couple hours a day or, through that painting to just sit in silence, that's my form of meditation. So I really need that to connect to my work and to just, stay grounded and be sane in life.
Why for art thou? Why do you make art?
Oh, it's a loaded question for sure. Besides the fact of just absolutely loving it and kind of feeling like I need to do it, it's really because I feel like I'm made to make art. That's the type of person. I was born an artist, and I really do feel like I was put on this earth to make art. It's really like the way I feel doing art feels like it's all I need to be doing in this world. Like when I'm painting, it doesn't feel like there's anything else that I should be doing in that moment. It's like, this is it. This is right. This is what I'm supposed to be doing right now. Maybe you're at your job and you're like, oh, I can't wait to go home, or you're thinking about doing other things and you don't maybe want to be there, or, there's other things on your mind, or you're dreaming about doing something else. For me, when I'm painting, everything is right. And I know in my soul that this is it. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And honestly, I really do believe that that's what constitutes a passion. So that is, if you feel that way with what you're passionate about, then that's right, and that you should definitely continue to do that, because that's what you're meant to do.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Beyond the Frame, a PAG podcast. To hear more episodes and to view the artist's works, please visit www.propellerartgallery.ca. Hosted by Doris Purchase, produced by Tracy Thomson, and recorded at the Orange Lounge Studio in Toronto. Also, the Propeller Art Gallery recognizes the presence of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Huron-Wendat nations. We acknowledge we are hosted on land governed by Treaty 13, the Toronto Purchase, the Two-Row Wampum Treaty, and the Dish with One Spoon Treaty. We are committed to peaceably sharing and caring for the resources around the Great Lakes and operating the gallery on the principles of inclusiveness as we continue to exhibit art created by artists from all over the world. Thank you for listening.